Welcome to the Incred podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Incred podcast. It is the humble Indian dream to study overseas, and the number of students wanting to study abroad has only multiplied over the years. However, there is still a large chunk of students who fail to realize their dream of studying abroad due to several factors. So today we will show you a real picture of studying abroad and what is the true ROI of pursuing an overseas education. Joining us for this podcast is Purvi Tantia. Purvi is a globally renowned international college admission counselor. She is the founder of ACE Overseas Education Consultants and has helped thousands of students in their journey to study abroad. With more than a decade of experience as an international college counselor, she is the go-to expert for students and parents seeking admission to top universities globally. She has been invited to speak to global audiences on popular stages like TEDx and has also been invited to chat on American television shows. Welcome to our podcast, Purvi. We are very happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, Purvi. So my first question to you is about the cost of studying abroad. So can you give us a comparison of the average cost of studying abroad versus studying in India?
So usually the comparison would be in the difference in the tuition fees and living expenses per year. So when we are looking at a bachelor degree abroad, we have usual courses which are 3 years, but there are also universities, for example, in UK, which have started giving a 2-year bachelor degree, which is a fast track bachelor degree. Or in US or Canada, you can actually have a 4-year bachelor degree, which could be a complete bachelor degree or an honors bachelor degree. So I would say in an average setting, you would have a tuition fees and living expenses. These are the two cost factors when you're looking to go abroad to study. When you come to living expenses would usually be, I'm just giving a very generic parameter here, but I would say look at least 1 lakh rupees per month for Indian students. If you're really looking forward to go to these destinations, that's a good amount, around 12 lakh rupees of living expenses to live like a good student life. Now you can live in luxurious penthouses and you can possibly increase the cost of living expenses to 5 lakh, 10 lakh or 15 lakh rupees per month as well. Or you can actually share accommodation with, let's say, 3 or 4 friends. And you can bring down it to probably 60, 70,000, 80,000 as well. But I would say a lakh per month is usually a decent number to live on a healthy student budget anywhere across the world. When it comes to tuition fees, it really ranges depending upon the rank of the university as well. So you would have some universities which can actually give you a 1-year tuition fees of approximately $8,000 to $10,000 as well. And there are others which can actually be $80,000 to $100,000 as well. So it really depends upon which rank or reputation you're really looking at. But on an average, I always say 12 lakh rupees as living expenses is a good amount, and around 10 to 12 lakh rupees of tuition fees is where you can start with.
In general, what are the factors that students need to consider when choosing the university between India and abroad? What can they compare? What can they compare it on the basis of?
Usually, I say they should be seeing what do they want in their life and in their career. If they're really looking forward for working in multinational corporations or working in their family businesses and taking it to global standards, or doing something which requires a cross-country work, then an international exposure outside is worth it while you're studying. So at that point in time, you're looking at more of exposure given the time that you're in. And when you're in the learning journey, when you're doing your undergrad, postgrad, you're already a student and you're learning a lot. So at that point in time, I always say it's better to see it from the angle of what is the value today rather than comparing, oh, it will cost me this much in India or it will cost me this much abroad. So look at your long-term horizon. What do you want to do? And earlier you study abroad, you possibly get global exposure earlier, and that really translates to better opportunities in future.
So you are saying basically starting sooner would be beneficial.
Starting sooner is always helpful. But at the same time, I always say studying abroad, as you also mentioned earlier, is the dream of a lot of students who they cannot possibly easily fulfill because of financial issues. But I would always say plan it sooner so that you can achieve it sooner. So if you start thinking about it while you're in class 12, it's okay to go in master's degree because you started thinking about it in class 12. So plan sooner and start sooner. Not like, hey, I want it right now, and however my parents get it to me, I just need it. But plan it accordingly so that you can get it better, and early the better.
Right. Makes sense. And when it comes to, we've been discussing the cost. So are there any particular countries that are known for a reasonable or, relatively cheaper, providing a cheaper education than others?
I always say don't look at cheaper education, look at what you really want to do. So for example, a lot of students would say, I want to go to UK because it's closer as compared to US, right? And in UK, you would have the entire range of tuition fees from £8,000 to £80,000. So, and if you even have to go to the US, because a lot of people have this big American dream which they want to live, you would have some universities which would be probably around $10,000, $12,000 range. You can actually go there. So I would always say, like in India, you have all types of institutions, right? You would have something with a few thousand rupees of tuition fees, and you would have some of few lakh rupees of tuition fees. In every single country, you will get some option or the other. I would always say select the destination depending upon your goal, and then figure out what is the most efficient way of going there and studying there. Not that this is the cheapest possible program and that's why I'm studying. Always think of your long-term goal and your medium-term goal and your short-term goal, and then decide, rather than this is the cheapest, so I should just go there, study. And if you're just studying for the cheapest program, I don't think you're really planning for your career.
And what about working while you are studying? Is that something you would recommend?
I usually say yes, I definitely recommend that. So most countries except for Singapore, I would say, gives you around 20-hour work right to study and like work part-time. So when you're really looking at 20 hours, some universities like London School of Economics in UK would actually say we prefer that students work just up to 10 hours and not 20 hours, even if the government has given you work right up to 20 hours, because you can balance your studies better when you're just working for 10 hours. So I would definitely say, if you think the studies are getting overwhelmed or you're somebody who likes to take it slow, work up to 10 hours. And if at all you can really take the rigor, then up to 20 hours is fine. And I highly recommend working abroad, because the cultural understanding that you get when you're working for a company is not something that you can get when you're paying for a college and studying in a college.
Okay. So Purvi, my next question to you actually is quite subjective. Being someone who has also studied abroad, and also I'm sure your basic education must have been in India. From a personal level, what was the difference that you felt immediately when you moved abroad to study?
So one of the biggest differences which you will see after studying abroad is definitely your confidence level. Like it can skyrocket. Let's say if at all you map it on a scale of 0 to 100, if you think it was 70, it will possibly go to 90. If you think it was 80, it will possibly go to 95. If you were thinking it was 90, it will possibly go to around 98. I would not say 100 on 100, but definitely you see that skyrocketing jump in the confidence level, because now you have really broken those barriers of comfort zone, and you have challenged yourself. You have probably, if you're really exploring the opportunities out there, I promise you, you would experience a lot of failures. So it's not that you go there and everything is hunky-dory and you're just accepting everything in good mood and in good vibes. A lot of time you would fail. You might actually apply for a job and you don't get it and you feel the rejection. You might actually go to a class and you find it difficult to make friends because you don't have many brown skinned people, for example, in that class. And you're looking for brown skinned people. And that's why I say, please make sure that you don't really make color of the skin as a barometer to really make friends. Go and hang out with everybody. So you would experience a lot of failures and you would experience a lot of successes. So your confidence level would really increase after studying abroad. That's one thing which I've seen with every single student of mine I've sent in the last 10 years.
Now I'm moving on to, what happens post studying abroad, right? So in terms of full-time opportunities, once students complete their courses, how would you sort of rate countries? Are there any countries which are better than the others?
See, in terms of job opportunities, if you really look at a decade back, universities were doing a lot of placement fairs in India, and it was actually giving a kind of a notion to students that internationally also these job placement services would be given by the universities. And I still remember from day one, I've been telling students that do not depend upon the university placement services for your job. So it's all on you. Now, if you really come to 2021, I think most of them depend upon LinkedIn. So you're really going and taking care of your job finding and your entire recruitment process in your hand rather than asking university to really give you a job. So if you're looking at work opportunities, almost every single country has defined visa rules in terms of work visa. For example, if you're going to UK, now thankfully after years, you have some work experience, like work right after your studies. In Australia, you have, in Canada, you have, in US, you have. Every single country has a different rule and it keeps changing. So I always say before you're going, make sure that you check with your counselor, what are the work rights available in that particular country for your particular course. So for example, if you go to Canada, if you're studying for 1 year, you get a 1 year work visa. If you're studying for 2 years, you get 2. If you're going to US, you get a STEM visa, which is an extended visa. You have a non-STEM visa, which is a smaller visa. So every single country has a different rule. Make sure that you know it when you're going. So don't depend upon 2 years old rule. Like, hey, when my friend went or when my cousin went, this was the rule and that is the rule today. The rules keep changing.
Okay. So basically, especially with the jobs and all, you're saying it's the networking that counts.
Correct. Take charge of your job in your hand and then make sure that you know the visa rules. These are the only 2 things that you need to know, because now you're not dependent upon anybody else. You're dependent on yourself to find a job. And the Visa High Commission has told you that they have a work right for you. That means they have done the assessment and they know that there are job opportunities. No country would welcome students and give them work right if they think that their country doesn't have jobs, right? So make sure that you have confidence in yourself, work on networking, work on really coming out as somebody who is passionate and an expert in a particular field, and then find job yourself. Like, just don't depend upon the universities.
Okay. And how about studying abroad and then coming back to India and earning? I'm at the risk of sounding like a devil's advocate, I'm just wondering, from a student's point of view, a student would think I'm spending in dollars to gain my education, and if I come back to India and work here, I'm earning in INR. So many people, I'm sure, are worried about actually returning to the country and working here. Is that a valid sort of bias to have, or you think it's still easier?
I'll give you a little personal story here. When I went abroad to study, it was more of a gift from the college. Go Purvi, go and study abroad. And when I went there, everybody used to tell me, hey Purvi, what is your plan next? And I was like, I'll study and I'll go back to my country. That was the plan. And people were actually amazed, why am I saying I will go back to my country? But that was always in my mind, that India is a land of opportunities. That was 2007 when I went, until today. I know that, and all of us have seen that. So I don't think the comparison is if you're earning in dollars or you're earning in Indian rupees. The comparison is, where do you really think you belong in different times of your career? When you think you belong to an international country for a study abroad experience, you're going there. If you think you're better off really growing where you were planted, let's say in your own country, then you can always come back and there will be opportunities. If you're thinking of comparison of salaries, I always say, do not compare starting salaries. The biggest problem that I've seen when people compare salaries is, after the college, I actually got INR 8 lakhs here and INR 18 lakhs there. That's not the way you really need to compare. You possibly need to compare salaries probably after 2 or 3 jumps in your career. So even if you're coming back to India, you possibly would be promoted much faster as compared to a colleague who is probably not as exposed as you are in terms of your education and culture. So rather than comparing your starting salary, I always say compare the growth potential. And if you want to come back to India, it's definitely always a land of opportunities. I think now more than ever, like post-COVID, we all know that opportunities in India possibly would match anywhere abroad, because now you have companies like Google and Facebook saying that you can actually work from home. So if you're like literally sitting in Mumbai and working for the Facebook US office or Facebook Australia office, could be on a larger scale similar. So I think that distinction is possibly going to fade away anyways sooner.
That is indeed actually very encouraging. So Purvi, I have just two more questions for you. Before I jump on to my last question, I will come to the crux of the podcast today. So if you had to display the real ROI of studying abroad, how would you sort of define that, and how would you sort of, I'm not saying convince, but how would you present the case of, studying abroad?
In simple terms, I would always say, think how much you can actually invest in yourself. So it's not about investing in education, it's more about investing in yourself. So if you have a choice, let's say I want a car when I turn 22, or I want to study abroad, I would say maybe the education of studying abroad would yield more as compared to investing in a car at 21, 22. So it's more, the investment is in yourself. And if at all you feel that you have money to invest in yourself, then you can have 10, 20, 30, 40% ROI if you calculate on a longer term. If you're calculating on a short term, I can just definitely tell you one thing. If you are convinced that you can invest in yourself, you will reap in as much ROI as you want. Like I've had students who have really spend $100,000 to $200,000 in their education. And I would not say that they reap that amount in within a year or two. Definitely they don't. But if you're really investing that much, probably you will give yourself around 5 to 7 years to really justify that. But if you're investing, let's say $20,000 to $30,000, I would say you would have a very shorter, like short time duration where you can reap in the money back. So depending on how much you are spending, and I always say invest in yourself as much as you can comfortably do. So it's not about just, spend every single penny that you have and go study abroad and play the entire game as a gamble. That's not what it is about. It's about, this is the amount I can comfortably invest in myself. This is what I can take from my parents. This is what I can probably borrow. And this is a comfortable number. Then you jump into that rather than really playing it as a gamble, as I will go abroad and everything will be hunky-dory.
Great. Now coming to the funding piece, would you recommend students to take loans to fund their education?
I always say, if you believe in yourself and your parents believe in your capability, then you can go for borrowings. But if you think the time is not right, then it might be better to actually wait and increase that confidence that I can repay the money. If you do not have that confidence that I can repay the money, as I said, remember a few minutes back, I mentioned, if you have to find a job, you have to know the work permit of the country, and you need to know that you are capable of finding a job yourself. If you're saying I'm going to study and I am confident I will get the job on my own work, I am not depending upon the university, then you're in a much better position to decide if you can take an education loan.
Great. So before we end, if there are any tips that you want to give to students, say your top 5 tips for anyone who wants to study abroad, what would they be?
For sure, I would say number one, start thinking about it as early as possible. Don't do the mistake that I did, but because I did the mistake, I didn't have the choice. I didn't even plan to go abroad to study. The government just came in and said, hey, this is the money, just go and study abroad. But planning has always helped all my students. So plan for it. Number two, network. Like start networking with people early in your career. Start honing that muscle of networking, because internationally, when you're spending a year, 2, 3 years or 4 years, at that point in time, the network that you make really helps you in life. Number three, make sure that you're confident of your own skill set. Do not go there thinking, hey, the university will just change me and I will be a changed person when I'm coming back. Ensure that you're confident in your own skill set of learning and adapting and changing and accepting challenges. Fourth, very, very important, you will face a lot of failures. Be ready for it. And I promise you, those failures will make you a better person. So do not go there thinking, I'm going to excel everywhere. You're going to excel, but the route to be excellent is not like this. The route to be excellent is a curvy route. You have to fall, you have to get up. And last but not the least, just have fun when you're there. Like, live in the moment, have fun, network, make friends, work, study, do everything, but just literally enjoy the time period that you have to study abroad. That's it.
Great, Purvi. Thank you so much. I think all these tips and everything that you mentioned, even drawing from your personal experience, has been very helpful. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. My pleasure.